Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in the city right now. Yesterday, he made an announcement related to terrorism. He joins us live now in studio. Sir, it's really nice to see you. We certainly have a lot to talk about. I would like to start talking about the pharmacare bill that just went through the Senate, because this is a newer development, and we understand what's going to happen next with this bill. There are going to be conversations with the federal government and provinces and territories that would see certain medications covered now, for example, diabetes. I'd like to get your take on this, because I know you have concerns with this plan, and I'm curious, for Canadians who might start to rely on this plan to get their drugs covered, how could they be affected if your party forms government?
Well, I suspect there will be very few people affected at all, because the vast majority, well over 90% of Canadians, are already covered with private plans, and we support that. We also support ideas that would fill in the gaps for the very, very small minority of people who don't have drug coverage and can't afford medication. Unfortunately, this bill does not do that. In fact, it does something very troubling that nobody's talking about. It pushes for something called a single-payer system. Now, what does that mean? It means that only the government would be allowed to be that single payer and provide drug coverage. So if you are a union worker whose union has negotiated for you a drug plan, in the long run, this bill seeks to eliminate that plan and force you onto a government plan. And we saw when Kathleen Wynne tried to do that provincially, it ended up giving people worse coverage than they had before, all while building up a big bureaucracy. We also worry about companies saying, well, listen, if the government's going to have a plan, then they'll drop their workers from the workplace plan, and end up meaning people will get far fewer drugs covered than they had before. So a lot of people are going to be very concerned when they start seeing that this plan, far from giving new coverage, is going to take away coverage that they already have, and I will never allow that to happen.
So as a result, because of some of your concerns, would you scrap this plan then if your party forms government?
We're not going to have a single-payer system that bans you and union workers and countless other people from keeping the excellent private plans they already have. And Trudeau and the NDP, frankly, they risk, if you vote for them, you risk losing your drug plan and getting a badly run, extremely expensive, slow government plan to replace it. And I think that's a terrible idea.
You mentioned gaps that you would like to see filled as a result of this. What would that look like then?
Well, there are, like I said, well over 90% of Canadians already have drug plans. There are a tiny, tiny minority of people who are not already covered by social assistance or by their workplace plan that might need some assistance. I think we should find out who they are. Instead, the government takeover Trudeau and the NDP Liberals are planning takes all the 90% of people that have plans, throws them off their plans, and says, well, one day we'll give you a government plan that will be that will replace it. I think that is crazy. Why not just find the people who don't have coverage and help them?
I also want to talk about your announcement from yesterday. So we were in Toronto talking about this push for the government to put the Houthis listed as a terrorist organization. You also mentioned this is something we've seen the United States do. They did this earlier this year.
January.
We talked to or reached out to the public safety minister. They say they're talking with their allies. They're still looking at adding different groups to the list. What would this actually mean, though, this designation? How could this make Canadians feel safer and actually be safer?
Well, there's two groups that I want banned right now. One is the Houthis. They're the ones that operate on behalf of Iran in the Gulf of Aden and in the Red Sea. They're firing missiles at civilians. They've attacked civilian transport ships and they've fired hundreds of missiles at civilians. They are a front for the Iranian dictatorship. And they're legal. Right now, if they wanted to raise money, recruit, operate on Canadian soil, they could do it legally. I'm saying we have Section 8305 of the Criminal Code that allows the minister to list terrorist organizations as banned entities in Canada, ban the Houthis so they don't come to Canada, just like the IRGC did. They sent 700 agents to Canadian soil to harass the Persian and Jewish population, and it took Trudeau 6 years to ban them. We should ban not only the IRGC, but the Houthis. Then there's the Samadoun. These are the people out burning our flags, throwing bombs at and Molotov cocktails at synagogues, fomenting hatred against Jews on Canadian streets. They should be banned as a terrorist organization because they are a proxy for other banned terrorist entities. So ban the terrorists, keep our people safe, put Canada first for once.
You talked about anti-Semitism. This is a huge issue everywhere right now, but especially in the GTA. Our chief was just talking about this last week. We're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, rise in Islamophobia. When it comes to hate speech, hate crimes, do you think there needs to be a clearer definition on that and maybe even tougher penalties? Because this is a huge issue and it doesn't seem to be going away.
Well, it was never like this before Trudeau. Let's keep in mind we've had wars in the Middle East for centuries, and we never saw it spill over onto Canadian streets. We never saw fire bombings of synagogues or bullets flying through Jewish school children's the windows. That never happened, but Trudeau has pushed a dangerous and divisive ideology that separates people into different groups. His border policies have been reckless, allowing numerous ISIS terrorists to come into this country. He's allowed Samadoun to continue to foment anti-Semitic hatred on the streets. That's the consequence we have after 9 years of Trudeau. We have a 251% increase in hate crimes. 251% increase in hate crimes after 9 years of Trudeau. We need to get rid of this ugly ideology, secure our borders, ban the terrorists, and unite our people, bring people together. Make this again the country that we were promised, where it doesn't matter if your name is Martin or Mohammed, Smith, Singh or Steinberg. We're all Canadians. We have one set of common shared values and common freedom.
Do you think, though, people take the charges seriously enough? Because in talking with the police locally, they say, you know, these are extensive investigations they have to roll out.
I don't think any criminals take any charges seriously after 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP Liberals. They know that even if they're caught, they'll be released on bail within minutes. We saw the guy who shot the police officer last week. He was out on bail after violating his probation orders 24 times. So, the Trudeau catch and release criminal justice system signals to criminals, you can do whatever you want. You can terrorize, you can attack, you can kill, you can rape, and you will be out on bail within minutes to do it all over again. We need to get rid of that catch and release, bring in jail, not bail, mandatory prison sentences to lock up the criminals and stop the crime.
On bail reform, and we know that our Premier, Doug Ford, talked about this last week too, because he's frustrated knowing that the man who's accused of shooting this Toronto police officer had quite a rap sheet, right? So he's saying something needs to be done at the federal level. The Justice Minister saying, well, it's a provincial matter. It seems like there's a lot of back and forth here. No. How do you get involved in this? How do you change maybe the directive, if that is something that you would like to see change?
You just have to repeal Justin Trudeau's bail law. It's C-75. We didn't have these problems before Trudeau. He brought in C-75, which brings in an automatic release on bail it's called the principle of restraint. The judges are forced to give the maximum leniency to the newly arrested criminal. And so after 9 years of Trudeau, we have a situation where in Vancouver, the same 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times in 1 year, 150 arrests per offender per year. I would bring in a law that says if you have a long rap sheet, you will be ineligible for bail, parole, house arrest, or probation. It will be jail, not bail, when Pierre Poilievre and the common sense Conservatives are in office.
We know this is a huge deal, too. I mean, we hear it from people every single day. Yeah. So we'll certainly be following up on that one. I also wanted to ask you about some comments Donald Trump made about looking at renegotiating the USMCA, this agreement that was just negotiated when he was president. If you become prime minister, do you think this is a good thing, taking another look at that agreement? And is there anything that stands out for you that you would like to renegotiate
too? I mean, Trudeau fell flat on his face. And I was, as a Canadian, putting partisanship aside, I was really saddened to see the way Trump bulldozed over Trudeau in the last negotiations. Trudeau was forced to sign onto a deal that kept in place tariffs on our softwood lumber, that banned our construction companies from working on American construction projects, that prevented us from getting the Keystone Pipeline built, and the list goes on. I want to get a deal that stands up for Canadian workers, get rid of the softwood lumber tariffs, allow our construction companies access to American job sites, as they had under the previous Conservative government when we negotiated that with Obama and Bush. And finally, the big thing that really worries me is Trudeau's 61 cent a litre carbon tax. I think the only person who likes the idea, who loves a Canadian carbon tax of 61 cents a litre more than Trudeau, is Trump. Because if we bring in a 61 cent a litre carbon tax, all our businesses are going to go to the States, and they're going to steal our money and jobs. I will axe the carbon tax, pass a bring it home tax cut so that we bring back our businesses, our paychecks, our production, and lower prices for Canadians.
I wanted to talk more, but I think we've run out of time, and I certainly appreciate you coming in to talk to us because I think we covered quite a bit. Thank you, sir, for your time. We'll be in touch. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.